also on the ballot was the election of an attorney, which is required by the Comanche Nation Constitution. How did you determine which law firms would be included on the ballot?
I got what we did. We had to, it comes to qualification. There's been chairmans, it just brought up this point about set precedent, traditional ways of doing things. I had a first cousin that was a chairman, and he would be at the general council and say, "We got a lawyer, move on." Then we had one that said, "Well, we're going to bring 20 law firms here," and they took up the whole general council, and everybody got bored and left home, and we lost our quorum. When we come into our tribal council, our annual meeting, the third week of every April of every year, there's got to be some concise things we have to do. So in the past, we've taken requests for proposals. We sent some out before our meeting, and nobody replied. So we came to general council, and we had some situation that happened at the start of the general council. It just became uncontrollable, people talking out of term. The order was lost. Thank God we had the nominations in for people going to be elected. Thank God for that. So it comes to this. Who is the tribal council? Our Constitution speaks to everybody over 18 years of age. Is everybody over 18 years of age at our Woodgee-Watchataker Hall at the annual meeting? No. Like I said, we have 16,776. Out of that, 9,000 is this tribal council. 9,000. So is that ruling for such an important position, and if we couldn't get the nominations done there, can we at least take it to the 9,000 tribal council members, which is the power of our nation? Everyone over 18 years old is the 9,000 population. So we sent it to the general election. And this year was the first time the general election brought us an attorney. Then somebody from the old election board says, "Well, don't they win by 51%? Well, hold on. Your own ordinance was wrong on that. You guys had a misprint, so you can't even elaborate to that of your old ordinance that was out of order, and you guys never followed it anyway." We had an election position in 2016, went totally awry. Had two-party race, had runoff twice. Who does that? Because of the misprint of their rule book. So usually if set practice that we've done in our general council, whoever is the top winner with the most votes on tribal attorney, that's the winner. And this year, our retained attorney, I believe the number was 48%, was it? 48% winner. So that's how that all came about. We took it first time, and I hope it's a set precedent for our future, where we can have a nomination process at least 30 days before general council, and even that day, take nominees there. But the nominations, they have to qualify. There's a lot of qualifications. So hopefully we can set this up, and we got the RFP out there for an election coordinator. We do have this ordinance that needs to be trimmed down from 34 pages down to maybe 5 of a rule book to really follow. Don't change it up. Don't claim autonomy. Don't take your CBC to court. I know I'm being adamant on this, but when you throw all that into the mix, I believe this is the first year, historic year, that we actually had an attorney hired by everybody over 18 years old. Did we have a lot of disenfranchisement due to the, and I'm going to bring it up, due to the people having to get a notary to get an official ballot? Had to do it due to all the anomalies of 2016. The actual investigation of stuffing the ballot is still valid. So until we can come to a true identification of people voting, living abroad, Comanche Nation, we're going to work on it very diligently, where we have 4 or 5 checks and balances to get you that vote. We actually want internet voting. I want iPhone voting. I mean, gosh, if we bank on our iPhone, We can vote from our iPhone, shouldn't we? But we got to have those great checks and balances in there. Got to do it. We can't just sit back and wait for a big old machine where we put our ballots in and get our little digital number one and then have 20 hands all over it, and then, then everything's chaotic, It's a big question. We got a big task to do, and this business committee, they're up to the task. So that's where we're at on that.
Well, moving away from the election itself for a little bit, there's a lot of questions surrounding the hiring of the tribal administrator. And really the specific issue is some members are petitioning for nominations and selection of a tribal administrator to occur at the general council meeting because they claim they were not allowed to exercise this duty at the 2017 Comanche Nation annual general council meeting. How do you respond to that?
I've got a great response. The precedent practice of saying all 18 years of age or older is present is just not true. That's false. So, when you have nominees on that day, our third week of April, we have nominees for tribal administrator. This year, this entire year, we had a forensic audit done. We got an FBI investigation ongoing. We have an IRS investigation ongoing. I'll just be candid. I'll be honest. Some of the nominees fit in this category of this grand jury. Is justice slow? Very slow. So it comes to this. One nominee on this floor for tribal administrator was fired. And we have an HR policy. If you're fired, you cannot hold another employment position for 1 year. So he was disqualified right then. And then the other one, there's 3 counts that we are to promulgate laws, enforcement. The tribal council doesn't promulgate this. We do as elected officials. For what? For the safety, for the welfare, the common well-being of each Comanche Nation member. We bring forth a law. And we brought forth in January of 2017 the Accountability Act, because this forensic audit showed us so many different things. And there's 12 items on this Accountability Act that the forensic audit showed us. So if you didn't meet that criterion, you were not going to be qualified. You were not. And one nominee was so insubordinate to the possible directors, which is this elected business committee, was so insubordinate to the possibility of becoming an administrator, he took the Accountability Act and ripped it in half in defiance and threw it out, to the cheers of his 20 supporters there. So, by acclamation, we have a tribal administrator. He qualifies every time we run a random drug test around here. He has saved our nation over millions upon millions of dollars. He's a fiduciary tribal administrator. He holds a master's, more than qualified. Helped us to the point where we're treating this place as a business. Has a heart for the people. Winner.
Vice Chairman Cothren, your thoughts on the tribal administrator?
Well, I agree with everything that the chairman said. The incidents that happened at this last general council we had did happen. I think everyone here on the CBC witnessed it, except for the 2 new ones. But there was no other person or persons that were able to run against the existing TA. And as Mr. Nelson has said, he is definitely qualified. He has stepped up and done more than anyone that I've ever witnessed over the 30 years that I've been involved in tribal politics as to getting anything done up here. And so I think we're very wise to keep Mr. Otterberry in place.
Let's talk about the 2017 Accountability Act. Some tribal members claim that due to the proposed agenda not being allowed to be approved or amended, the contents and validity of the Accountability Act were not presented to the Tribal Council for discussion and approval, and that violated the Constitution. So, pursuant to Comanche Nation Constitution, which is Article 6, Section 7, Part E, it states the Business Committee has a duty to develop proposals which are in the interest of fulfilling the Comanche Nation tribal organization, including but not limited to programs involving employment, health, education, public relations, social, recreational, and historical activities of the tribe. Such program proposals shall be presented to the Tribal Council for consideration, for final consideration, as to adoption or rejection. Your thoughts?
Goes right back to who is the supreme governing body. Everybody that's 18 years and older, everybody that is 18 years and older. For us to know that we do have grand jury that's upcoming due to this investigation, I had to come up with a parameter. I did. There was three laws of three different sovereign nations, one in Arizona, one in Idaho, and the other on the East Coast. They were wanting to go to the point of treason and excommunication of their tribal members that were caught in these categories. Categories of embezzlement, categories of misappropriation, categories of unfairness, all the categories that, you know, fit in the guise of misappropriation. One actually passed where treason was sought out. You were treasonous to your nation and you're excommunicated from your tribe, no longer to be a tribal member. So when this was written, I wanted to make sure that we as a nation can set up a parameter. We had a $38 million loss to our nation, $38 million. This man sitting here, the Secretary-Treasurer, newly elect, Robert Tippecanoe, and I collectively knew we had $14 million in our coffers in 2010. That money was unwisely spent during this past administration. Then you throw in another 24 unspent, paying bondsmen, buying people cars, going on luxurious trips, buying tires, contracting, sole source contracting. There's a non-Comanche that got $15 million of sole source contracts. Is it criminality? It's beyond criminality. It's beyond, there's an enemy in the camp. Was I wrong to write this Accountability Act? No, I was not. I'm expressing my Comanche-ness. I'm expressing what my parent told me. I'm expressing what my Cold Talker family fought for. We cannot have an enemy in the camp. I wrote this Accountability Act, and thank God it was passed. Now we are forming our court. The first time this nation in 50 years will have civility, appellate, from criminality to civil. Real judges, federal judges, acquainted to the education of a judge, that will have this Accountability Act to grab it as law and to use it. Our tribal council, I cannot tell my tribal council enough, if this did not happen, your nation was on the brink of insolvency, and there is no way I could ever let that happen to you again. And I appeal to the people. I appeal to you to tell these people that did such things, have some shame. Have some shame. Don't ever run for office again. Please. I've been quiet for too long. I've allowed people to sit there and say such demeaning things about this group that wants to do good business. I implore you to reach deep down in your senses. that we cannot take the children that belong to all these grandmas and grandpas and these children that are going through school, that their entire future was on the cusp. We cannot allow that. If I'm adamant once again, the Accountability Act is fair, it's just, and it will be in our court.
And with the passage of that act, should members rest assured that the days of fraud, waste, and abuse are over?
It sets up the parameter where you cannot come back. And it sets up the parameter if you get there and our court gets you to the point of behind bars, that's stuck to your entire CDIB for the rest of your life. You shouldn't be able to come back. No other government allows people to come back. And this Accountability Act speaks to that, sir.
This next question might be a little awkward or uncomfortable, but I think it's something that needs to be addressed, and it has to do with the recall petition of Vice Chairman Susan Cothren, a tribal member claiming that Ms. Cothren is violating Comanche Constitution, Article 15, regarding nepotism. That article states, "A relative of a member of the CBC shall not be employed with the Comanche tribal government system." Ms. Cothren currently has 2 siblings working for the Comanche Nation Housing Authority. Her brother is the procurement and facilities manager. Her sister, the accounts payable payroll clerk for the CNHA. The petitioner also makes a claim Ms. Cothren serves as the CNHA Board of Commissioners as the chairperson. So pursuant to Article 6, Section 7, Part D, the responsibility of the Business Committee is to develop annual budgets for the financing of Comanche tribal operations and to present such budgets to the Tribal Council for final consideration as to adoption or rejection. The 2017 approved budget and the proposed 18 budget both contain line items to distribute funding to the operations of the CNHA, which this petitioner, of course, claims makes that entity part of the Comanche Nation governmental system. So, Ms. Vice Chairman, would you care to address that?
Sure. I think this is the 4th recall on me, so.
You've been through this before.
Down this road before, yes. When I first ran for office 2 years ago, I did bring this issue up, that I did have relatives working at the Housing Authority. I was told at that time by CBC members that checked into it for me that I was able to run because it was a separate entity. They checked with the director at that time, which I assume maybe checked with HUD. I don't know, I wasn't present. But I was told that I was able to run since HUD falls under state and federal guidelines. It does not fall under tribal guidelines. Back in, I don't know exactly when it was, but there was a resolution that was passed, and it was started by Mr. Wallace Coffey, and the resolution got the opinion of our Constitution as far as governmental, what that meant, and that opinion was given by Hobbs, Strauss, and Dean, I believe, yes. And the key word in there was governmental. And at that time, this resolution that was passed by CBC from the chairman, Wallace Coffey, stated that governmental meant anything that fell underneath the tribal administrator. They considered that governmental. The resolution was passed long before this CBC. So based upon that, Housing Authority does not fall under the tribal administrator. And they've been working there. My brother's been there 11 years. My sister's been there going on 4 or 5. They were there before I came on. I've not promoted them. I've given them no raises. They have no Indian homes. In fact, to take it a step farther, while I've been vice chairman, I've not brought one friend, relative, or acquaintance up here as an employee. I don't do that.
So just to be clear, your brother and sister were already employed in their capacity long before you would have had a chance to influence their jobs.
Yes, that's true. And as far as the CBC sitting there as a committee, that was implemented by the previous CBC. That wasn't implemented by this board here. We went on and just assumed it as they fell off from recalls or term lapses or whatever. So it's nothing that we started. It was already implemented, being a board over the Housing Authority. So,
as far as the Dodd property goes, there's discussion, it was the sale of a 320-acre tract of land called the Dodd property. Some tribal members claim the proposal for the sale of the land was never brought forth to the tribal council for final consideration for rejection or adoption, pursuant to, specifically, Article 6, Section 7, Part E of the Constitution, and the Business Committee did not have the authorization from the tribal council to conduct transactions of this nature. Let's go back to you, Vice Chairman Cothren, your response.
well, the land was out by the mountains, out in a remote area. This land was purchased by the previous administration, Wallace Coffey. This land was bought at a very inflated price, very inflated. As far as I know, the BIA doesn't require any approval or anything on fee property. There's a difference between fee and trust property. Now, had it been a trust property, we would have had to go through a lot more hoops to get that done. But based upon the information that was provided to myself, Mr. Poway, and Mr. Narcomey, and 2 other previous CBC members that totally worked against us.
Who was that?
It was Jerry Tashaquah, he was the Secretary Treasurer, and Harry Mithalo were all present in a CBC meeting when this property was brought up to make the sale. It was voted on unanimously. You can ask Mr. Poway, you can ask Mr. Narcomey. But prior to selling this property, it was brought to our attention from the manager or director of our realty, and that's Mr. Dennis Wumavoya, that this property was going to start getting assessed taxes because it was a fee property. We hadn't been paying them. So we were maybe possibly looking at some stiff taxes as well as penalties. Also, this property, like I said, was way out in the middle of nowhere. Our police chief visited with me on this situation, and they could not monitor this property because it was so far out. They couldn't get by it all the time. So the property had been broken into several times. We had had a renter in there that left the place in a shambles, and it cost the tribe $35,000 to repair the damages that were done by this family or individuals. Also, the property was, like I said, getting broken into, and there was also suspicion of a possible meth lab being started out there. So, according to the people that I spoke with, this was an albatross around the Comanches' necks, and it was nothing but a place for problems and trouble to start. So, based upon that, I spoke with the CBC about maybe we ought to look at getting rid of this property. Now, I know an attorney has accused me of not getting bids properly and all that. Well, bids were taken, and 3 bids came in, sealed bids. And the property that we picked, or the person that we picked to purchase it, was the highest bidder. And that was for $600,000 cash money. We paid $740,000, I believe, for that, or $760,000, which was way over market value. We were doing good to get the $600,000. So I feel very comfortable in saying the CBC, as well as myself, made the right decision.
So there was a net loss on the sale of the property, but you headed off this liability that was waiting.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes. Based upon the information that was provided to us, I took this to the CBC and we discussed it, and it was something we all decided to do. Although 2 of the other CBC members, Mr. Tashaquah and Mr. Mithalo, turned around and proceeded with a lawsuit against myself and Mr. Narcomey, since he was acting Secretary Treasurer at the time, because we couldn't get our other Secretary Treasurer to step up and do his duty, because at any given time, those 2 gentlemen would not show up for meetings and left us without a quorum. So hence, myself and the 2 other CBC members had to call for a general council and take these issues in front of the general council to let them know that we were being stifled by not being able to conduct business because of the 2 people that would not show up for meetings. So at that time, we prepared a resolution and we presented it to the tribal council, and they passed the resolution for us 38-16 resolution for us three to conduct business on behalf of the tribe until we had an established quorum. At that time, that resolution became null and void.
Could I add something to that? Mr. Clyde Narcomey, during that time that these guys were not coming and making a legal quorum, who was the biggest losers in that?
The Comanche tribe was the biggest loser.
And what did you do at every meeting of new membership coming aboard?
Repeat that question now.
New members coming aboard, how many meetings did those two individuals walk out of? I know you got an answer.
If I'm thinking correctly, they walked out on about maybe 8 or 9 meetings. They would come and show up. We would have a quorum, and then we would try to pass a resolution. Them two gentlemen, Jerry Toshqua, Secretary Treasurer, and Harry Mathlow, they would just get up and walk out and leave us without a quorum, so we couldn't do no business. So they put us behind. They really put us behind, the Comanche tribe behind about 8 or 9 months.
Clyde, how many young Comanches will be disenfranchised because of those actions?
There's approximately 30 new Comanches that should have been put on the roll to be entitled for the 2016 per cap. But because these two gentlemen chose to walk out and leave us without a quorum, that resolution was not passed to add on the 33 new Comanches. So these 33 new Comanches, they didn't get no per cap for 2016. But once we got a quorum established, us three, Vice Chairman Susan Cothren and Committeeman Polway and myself, after the General Counsel gave us the okay to go ahead and do business, well, we added them on. But it was too late. It was too late because you have to everything has to be signed before the end of the fiscal year. But we didn't get permission until the following year. So that them 30-something new Comanches, they missed a per cap, which was right around $1,200–1,300 a piece.
Guess what, Clyde? I did some research on my own. It wasn't 30, it's 68. Because they had walked out on a previous that never went forward. And that's uncalled for.